Greetings. Let me switch to Anthills of the Savannah and give a synopsis like I've done in Anna Pamwan Wiflo. Anthills of the Savannah by Chinua Achebe. Anthills may represent a society, a community, and the ants that live in the society represents the citizens of the country. Therefore, the anthill holds a community that works together for the welfare of that country. And so by the time the novel opens, there is a civilian government that had been ruling and which is considered incompetent. And so there is a military takeover which ushers His Excellency Sam to power. Being a military man and a novice in politics, he calls his closest friends, Chris and Ikem, to help him run things around. And they think that being a young man, he will have a vision to carry and move the country forward. Unfortunately, he turns out to be like any other African leader once they assume power. The first thing is he becomes very authoritative, and he's almost transforming himself to a totalitarian leader, a dictator. One, he wants to become president for life, and he organizes a referendum, which all the other three regions vote for, except Abazon. In the cabinet meeting that opens the novel, he is in an open confrontation with Chris because he brings up the idea of him visiting Abazon, the region in Kangan, which is facing the worst drought in their history. And the meeting comes to an abrupt end. We could also see that he even terrorizes his own cabinet members and relies more on the flatterers like Professor Okong and the Attorney General. There is a delegation that comes from Abazon because he has refused to visit them, to send them aid, and he has stopped the digging of boreholes in an area that needs the precious liquid so badly because he wants to punish them politically for refusing to vote him. Among his friends, the only person who can stand up to him in his cabinet is Chris, but the one who criticizes him openly is Ikem Osodi. Although the editor of the National Gazette, which is the government newspaper for propaganda, he uses it to criticize the bad governance in Kangan through his editorials, and that brings him in conflict with his former friend, now head of state. And his close friends start realizing that his life may be in danger. And the story is told from different points of view. From the point of view of those who witnessed it, those who know the characters, Chris, Ikem, Beatrice, and Matt Medico, and then the omniscient narrator. We are made to understand that when His Excellency realizes that his friends are not with him totally, as instigated by Professor Okong, he begins to detach them from his inner circle. And he brings himself and surrounds himself with a group of flatterers. As Beatrice notices when she attends the dinner at the Presidential Lakeside Resort at Abichi Lake. When she comes back, she informs Chris that there is danger in the future. And she knows that nothing can happen to one of them without affecting all the others. And she tells Chris to patch whatever thing that he and Ikem disagree upon, because they will rely on one another in the future. When His Excellency decides to do away with Ikem and asks Chris to suspend him, Chris refuses because he does not see any reason why he should do so. And the reasons which His Excellency advances are not sufficient evidence for him to suspend. Ikem from his position. And His Excellency does it by himself. And Ikem goes on the offensive, having numerous speeches in public places in which he openly criticizes the incompetency, the corrupt nature in the public service, and the manner in which the masses in Kangan are neglected. And he makes a very wrong move in an interview in which he simply says that having the head of state on the currency is as better as cutting the head off, which means it's not good to put the head of state's head on the currency. But those controlling the National Gazette misinterpret and twist what he has said as if to mean that Ikem wants the president to be killed. And that is enough reason. The fact that Ikem had gone to visit the Abazon delegation at Harmony Hotel is already a clear indication from the hint that His Excellency had already had from Professor Okom that Ikem may be an instigator to the visit of the Abazon delegation. Ikem is doomed. At night he's arrested, tortured, and killed. And when Ikem's death is made known, the government gives a different version of a blah blah, something like Ikem trying to fight or struggle and then he's mistakenly killed. And they refuse to give his body for burial on the fact that there is an investigation ongoing. And they frame him that he is the mastermind of a military coup d'etat that has just been downplayed. He is the main man conniving with foreigners to overthrow the government. And Chris is not happy with such a version. And in an interview with the BBC, he accuses the government of actually murdering Ikem. And he puts his life in danger. Beatrice is like the goddess Idimeli, who is there the middle, to guide men who seek power. She too is at the center of these three powerful men in Kangan who had once been best friends, whom if they had all put their energy together, they would have, with their intellect and their ideas, would have carried Kangan to a different level of development. But greed and the desire to acquire much power splits them apart. And that's how Chris goes into hiding, aided by so many. And even with some people within the government, like the anonymous scholar, whom we later find out to be Captain Abdul, asking Beatrice to remove the horse. He knows where the horse is, but he should remove the horse to a different hiding. And he came, and Chris's hideout is raided by the military that same night. Fortunately, he manages to escape to Abazon with the help of Bremo and in the presence of Emmanuel Ubete, who is the president of the student union. Unfortunately, by arriving at Abazon, there is news that there's a new military takeover. But there's an ugly situation in which a policeman drags Adama with the intention to abuse her. And when Chris intervenes and threatens him to report him to his superior, he picks up his gun and shoots him. And Chris dies. And even when Chris is given a burial, Kangan has lost one of the finest brains. Ikem is a crusading journalist and an open critic whose ideas would have brought so much development to Kangan. Unfortunately, they die. And we are made to understand that the military, the new leaders who have taken, had taken the president out of the palace, shot him in the head, and buried him in a shallow grave in the bush. But of course, like every sad story, there is an element of joy. Because while before Ikem dies, he had already impregnated his girlfriend Elewa, and the baby is born. And Beatrice takes upon herself to name the child Ameya China. And this child is the only hope that can remind them of the presence of the once illustrious son of Kangan, Ikem. And by the time Chris dies, Chris's last message is the last grain. 3 bottles on a shelf, and all have fallen down and broken, and he is the last. It's a message of hope.